visiting the hybrids. My first encounter with the hybrid children, and my first glimmer of understanding of what eternity is like. The base we are visiting today is underwater, said Sinhar in Anashamra. We are about to descend way down into the Pacific. What about air? I asked, a bit apprehensive about the idea. Surely Sinhar in Anashamra won't forget I could not breathe underwater, but still. We passed through a lock that is safe for both water and air, said Sinhar in Anashamra, and inside, it's geared for the hybrids, which, just like humans, need air. In a few minutes we stopped, and I assumed correctly that we were already inside the base. They are expecting us, said Sinhar in Anashamra. Don't worry about them. They know I can blow the whole place up if they dare to give me any trouble. The spaceship's door opened, and I saw that we were inside a huge hangar-like room. If I had expected a beautiful aquarium-like window showing the denizens of the deep playing in their blue environment, I would have been disappointed. But knowing the Greys, I expected nothing of the sort, and so the beige and gray room, all metal and lacking any windows, did not exactly surprise me. This base is enormous, you know, said Sinhar in Anashamra. It is used for many operations, but we will just concentrate on the hybrids today. I was pleased to hear that, since I was secretly apprehensive about the possibility of stumbling on one of the Greys' hellish laboratories. I will never forget or forgive what I saw in their lab, but I said nothing and waited to see what was going to happen next. Sinhar in Anashamra walked me to a solid wall, put her hand on it, and the wall shimmered a little and then moved, allowing a door to form and open for us. We entered a long corridor, illuminated by stark white light, with many regular doors on each side. Sinhar in Anashamra opened one of the doors, and we entered a large room, obviously a refectory since it contained extremely long tables, all made of metal. The room was painted entirely in beige, tables, chairs, walls, and ceiling, and had no windows. It was scrupulously clean. Suddenly, the tables opened up, each table revealing a deep groove on each of its long sides. Plates of what seemed to be normal human food were released from the grooves and placed each before a chair. At this moment, a few doors opened at various parts of the room, and from each door an orderly file of children came in and settled at the table. They were completely silent, not a word was heard, as they picked up their forks and began to eat. None of them paid any attention to us, even though we stood in plain view. The children seemed to range from 6 to 12, but it was difficult to be sure of that. On one hand, they were small and fragile, so I might have mistaken their ages. On the other hand, their eyes gave the impression of almost old age. They seemed wise beyond their tender years. Their hair was thin, their skin was pale to gray, and they all wore white clothes of extreme cleanliness. Despite these similarities, which made them look as if they were all related to each other, I could tell some differences between them that seemed rather fundamental. It was almost as if they fitted within 3 distinct groups. I mentioned it in a whisper to Sinhar in Anashamra, and she nodded. Yes, you got it, she said. They consist of early-stage hybrids, and middle-stage hybrids, and late-stage hybrids. The first group is born from the first combination of abductees and Greys' DNA. They closely resemble the Greys. Look at their skin. The grayish color is very close to that of the Greys, and so is the facial structure. The second group, the middle-stage hybrids, are the result of mating between these early-stage ones, once they are old enough for reproduction, and human abductees. The resulting DNA is closer to humans, and so they look much more like humans, and many of them lose the progeria gene. The third group, the late-stage hybrid, is the most important. A middle-stage hybrid pair mated with humans to create them, and they can hardly be distinguished from humans. Yes, I can tell who the late-stagers are quite easily, I said. But there are not too many of them here, right? This is true, not too many are here. A large number of these hybrids, who represent the most successful results of the experiments, are placed for adoption with human families. Are the human families aware of the origin of their children? Yes, in most cases they are. Generally, they are adopted by a high-ranking United States military person who had worked or still works with extraterrestrials in secret military bases. This happens much more often than most people suspect. The spouse of the military person may or may not know, depending on circumstances and character traits. These lucky hybrids lead a much better life than those who are raised in places like this one, communally. Are they badly treated here? Are they abused by the Greys? No, the Greys don't want to lose them. They are too valuable. But they receive no love, no individual attention. There is no real parenting, and the environment is barren and depressing. They live like that until they are old enough to be of use in the experiments. Not a very nice life for any child. And what about progeria? I mean, for the adopted ones. Only the hybrids who are entirely free of progeria are adopted by human families. We even suspect, though we are not sure, that many of the progeria-stricken late-stagers are killed, since their progeria gene is too strong. The Greys believe that after these 3 attempts, it cannot be eradicated by further breeding. And so they kill the poor things. What is the motive for all these atrocities? All for the same reason I have mentioned. They think they somehow will save their civilization, but they are doomed. But in the meantime, they harm, torture, and kill so many people. I don't understand why it is tolerated. Sinhar Inanashamra did not answer. The children finished eating, still in complete silence. Each child, as he or she finished his meal, leaned back into the chair, and as soon as all of them were leaning back, the groove from which the plates came opened up and reabsorbed all the plates. They now go to an automatic dishwashing machine, explained Sinhar Inanashamra. The children got up and left the dismal room in the same file arrangement they came in. As soon as the room was empty, large vacuum cleaners emerged from the wall and sucked up every crumb, every piece of debris. Then they sprayed the tables and floor with a liquid that smelled like a disinfectant. The room was spotlessly clean again, ready for the next sad, depressing meal. "Shall we go to the dormitories now?" asked Sinhar Inanashamra. I nodded. We followed the children through one of the doors and entered a place that was a combination of an old-fashioned orphanage and military barracks. It was a very large room, but the ceiling was not high, only about 12 feet. Again, everything was beige and gray, and there were no windows to relieve the monotony. The room was full of beds, arranged above each other in groups of 3, like in a submarine. Dozens and dozens of such rows seemed to stretch to a very long distance. The beds were made of some metal, very smooth and of silver-gray color. They seemed to be assembled like prefab furniture. "Sinhar Inanashamra," I said, "there are no ladders. How do the children reach the upper levels?" "They can levitate," said Sinhar Inanashamra. "Look at this. Part of each bed is magnetic, so each child can have his or her toys attached to it. As for the lower beds, the toys are stored next to them." "So they have toys," I said. "That's a mercy." "Yes." The Greys discovered that mental stimulation is highly important to the hybrid's development. There are plenty of other activities, mostly with abductees, that relieve their lives of the tedium, at least to a certain extent. But they have no privacy at all. None whatsoever. They only get their own room when they are more mature, but they have one thing that pleases them. If the children want to, they can put their things in their bed, close the bed with a panel, and hide it inside a wall. They like that. I wonder, too, if it is not a comfort for them to be together after all. Their feelings and emotional climate are not exactly human. It's hard to explain. I think it's time for you to see them interact. Where are all the children now? They are attending various activities, said Sinhar Inanashamra. Come, I'll show you. We entered a room that opened directly from the dormitory. To my surprise, it was really a glass bubble. You could see the outside, which was an unpleasant desert surrounding. I found it nasty, but I figured that to the children it might have represented a pleasant change. About 10 children, seemingly between the ages of 6 and 8, sat on the ground, which was simply the desert sand. They were playing with normal human toys, trucks, cars, and trains. They filled the things with sand using plastic trowels that one usually sees on the beach. They were also building tunnels from the sand, wetting it with water from large containers that stood here and there. They seemed to be enjoying their games, certainly concentrating on them, but their demeanor remained quiet and subdued, and they did not engage in the laughter, screaming, yelling, or fighting that children of this age usually produce. They also have rooms with climbing equipment and places to play ball, said Sinhar Inanashamra. It is needed to strengthen their bones and muscles. I approached the children a little apprehensively, worrying that I might frighten the poor things. They looked up at me, seemingly waiting for me to do something, but I was pleased to realize that they were not afraid. I sat on the sand, took some stones that were scattered around, and arranged them so that they created a little road. The children stared at me for a minute with their strange, wise eyes, as if trying to read my thoughts, and almost instantly grasped the idea and continued to build the road together. None of them smiled, but they seemed very much engaged in the new activity. Once all the stones were used, they looked at me again, as if trying to absorb information, and sure enough, after a minute, they took the trucks and make them travel on the little road. I got up and let them play. So they can read minds, I said to Sinhar Nanashamra. To an extent, she said. At this age, they basically just absorb images you project. You probably thought about the trucks going on this road, and they saw it. And everything was done together as if they were mentally connected, I said. Do they do everything together? Yes, everything is communal, even the bathrooms where they clean themselves, but don't be too upset about it. If they are separated from each other before their adolescence, they are extremely upset. It is almost as if the onset of puberty makes them an individual, and before that they have a group mentality. Horrible, I said. They are not unhappy, said Sinhar Inanashamra. Only as adolescents, when they break off the communal mind, they understand how unhappy they are. But we will visit the adolescents on another occasion. Very well, I said. Would you like to see the room where they keep the fetuses? Asked Sinhar Inanashamra. I followed Sinhar Inanashamra to the corridor, and we walked quite a distance before opening another door. We entered another one of the hangar-sized rooms full of tanks. Each tank contains liquid nutrients, said Sinhar Inanashamra. This is where they put the fetuses, as soon as they are removed from the abductees. The tanks are arranged in order, from the youngest fetuses to those that are almost ready to be removed. Do they separate them into their stages? I asked. Yes, this room is for early stagers only. In other rooms they have the middle stagers. But the late stagers remain in the mother's womb until birth to make them as close to humans as possible. And what are the babies like? Quiet, not as responsive as human babies. Many of them die as soon as they are removed from the tank. Those that survive are generally mentally well developed, physically weak, and emotionally subdued. And who takes care of them? Both Greys and abductees. The Greys perform most of the physical requirements, but the abductees supply the human touch. We can't go there yet. How come? We need to prepare you to interact with abductees. They are very complicated. We shall have a few sessions about interacting with them at the same time we teach you how to work with the adolescents. Also, You wanted some instructions of how to contact and help those people that are children of humans and Anunnakis like your son. This should take some teaching too. We went back to our spaceship, not saying much. I remember thinking that if I were a member of the Anunnaki Council, I would vote to kill every gray in the known universe. Of course, I did not say it to Sinhar in a Nashamra, but I am sure she knew how I felt. Back home, I went to my beloved garden and sat under a tree that constantly showered tiny blossoms on me, like little snowflakes. I did not even know I was crying. "What is the matter?" said Marduk, who suddenly appeared next to me. I told him about the visit with the hybrids. "The hybrids are not abused," said Marduk. "Something else is bothering you." I thought for a moment and then decided I might as well be honest with him. "Yes," I said, "I cannot understand the Anunnaki's casual attitude about the fact that thousands of human beings are tortured and killed all the time. Neither you nor Sinhar Inanashamra seem to be as shocked as I am about the fact that the Greys engage in such atrocities." Marduk was quiet for a minute, thinking, at this conversation we did not use the conduit, because at my agitated state I found it difficult. I was not entirely used to it as yet, so I waited for him to say what he thought. "I see your point," he said. "You think we are callous about it. Yes, I do, to tell you the truth. Why don't you destroy the Greys? Why do you allow so much death, so much pain? Are you, after all, cruel beings? Have you become callous because you have lived so many years and became thick-skinned about suffering? No, we are not cruel. It's just that we view life and death differently than you do. We cannot destroy all the Greys, even if we wanted to. We don't commit genocide, even if they try to do it. But we don't want to kill them. We know that they will die on their own. And in the meantime, suffering means nothing to you?" "It means a lot, but destroying the Greys would not eliminate suffering in all the universes we go to. There are other species that are even worse. You just don't know them because the objects of their behavior are not humans. It seems to me that even though you are so much more sophisticated than the humans, the fact that you deny the existence of God may have deprived you of your ethics after all." "Deny God? What makes you think we deny God?" asked Marduk. He seemed genuinely surprised. "Marduk, you have told me more than once that the Anunnaki created the human race, not God. So where is God if he is not the creator? Your statements are contradictory." "Not at all," said Marduk. "The Anunnaki view of God is similar to human religions in many ways, but contains much more information. The term we use to describe God is all that is. To the Anunnaki, God is made of inexhaustible mental energy and contains all creation within itself, therefore representing a gestalt of everything that has existed, exists now, or will exist in the future, and that includes all beings, all known universes, and all events and phenomena. God's dearest wish is to share in the lives of all its creations, learn and experience with them, but while they are imperfect, God itself is perfect, which is why it can only be seen as a gestalt." "Why are you calling God it?" I asked. "Because we do not attribute gender to God." "I see," I said. "So in essence, the Anunnaki God is not all that different from ours. What else should I know?" It is possible that other primary energy gestalts existed before God came into being and actually created it. If so, then the possibility exists that there are many gods, all engaged in magnificent creativity within their own domains. We are not certain if that is so, but we do not dismiss this beautiful possibility. "That is vastly different from human thought," I said, meditating. "But how does it tie up with the life and death issues and with the fact that you have created us, the individuals that exist within God, though part of God, have free will and self-determination? In life and in death, each is a part of God and also a complete and separate individual that will never lose its identity. The Anunnaki are indeed the creators of human beings, but since each Anunnaki is a part of God, there is no conflict in the idea of their creation of humanity. Creation is endless and ongoing, and human beings, in their turn, create as well. For example, great art, literature, and service to other people, animals, and the planet Earth, though they do not exactly create life as yet. We are all part of the grand gestalt, and that makes all that is such an apt name for God. So how does that make the situation with the Greys' atrocities any better? It is better because the lives that they take are not disappearing into a void. Each individual is eternal, and even if killed as a child, will go on into other domains. I am not saying that this justifies the Greys' atrocities. I am merely pointing out that even though these atrocities do exist, the individuals affected will have another chance. Yes, this does make a difference, and I can see how it would affect your thinking. But for me, after seeing what the Greys do to humans in their labs, it is still very disturbing. I can understand that, Victoria. It is not something you are accustomed to. Tell me, do you still want to do this mission? He asked his question in a very neutral way, obviously not wanting to influence my free will. Yes, more than ever, I said. Maybe I can do some good for these sad children. I have a suggestion then, said Marduk. I don't see it as a long-term mission, since you cannot change the ways of the Greys from within. I think you will find it a springboard to other missions, as it is obvious to me that you have some thoughts about making the Anunnaki do something about the Greys and force them to stop the experiments. Doing this mission will be extremely good as a learning experience right from inside the Greys base. As for contacting the people who are the children of humans and Anunnakis, that will not take much of your time. There are very few of these around these days. How long do you think this mission will take me? Exactly 9 months, said Marduk. I stared for a minute and then laughed. I see what you mean, Marduk. You think I should start our daughter, allow her to grow in the tube in the Anunnaki fashion, and while she is in the tube, concentrate on my mission. Then I should come back and spend some time with you and the baby before embarking on other missions. Doesn't it sound like a good plan? While the baby is in the tube, there is nothing you can do for her other than look at her as she grows. And you can easily do that with a monitor from Earth, right from the Greys base. And we will talk every day, so if you have any concerns about her, I can take care of it. This is a wonderful idea, I said. I will have the orientation regarding the abductees and the adolescent hybrids, and of course the human Anunnaki people. And when I am ready to go on my mission, I will first stop at the hospital and start the baby. This plan made me feel a little better, but I knew I must give the issue some more thought and perhaps further discussion. So when I went to see Sinhar in Anashamra the next day to arrange for orientation, I brought the subject up with her and told her honestly how I felt. Yes, I do understand how you feel, Victoria, she said. Before we do any more work with the hybrid mission preparations, I would like to give you a little background about our relationship to life and death. I would very much welcome it, I said. So, let's start with the concept of an Haya, said Sinhar in Anashamra. I have never heard the word mentioned, I said. This word, which is also used as a Haya and Aleph Hayat, could be the most important word in Anak, our language, as well as in the written history of humanity, because it deals with several extremely important issues. These are the origin of humans on Earth, how humans are connected to the Anunnaki, importance of water to humans and Anunnaki, the life of humans, proof that it was the original woman who created man, Adam, and the human race via her Anunnaki identity, the return of the Anunnaki to Earth, humanity's salvation, hopes, and a better future for all of us, our gifts to you as your ancestors and creators. Complicated concepts, I said. I will try to explain the whole concept as clearly as possible because it is extremely difficult to find the proper and accurate word or words in terrestrial languages and vocabularies. Let's start with the word itself. The word Haya is composed of two parts. The first part is an or a, pronounced a, or aleph, pronounced aleph. It is the same letter in Anak, Akkadian, Canaanite, Babylonian, Assyrian, Ugaritic, Phoenician, Moabite, Siloam, Samaritan, Lachish, Hebrew, Aramaic, Nabatean Aramaic, Syriac, and Arabic. All these languages are derived from the Anak. Incidentally, the early Greeks adopted the Phoenician alphabet, and the Latin and Cyrillic came from the Greek. The Hebrew, Aramaic, and Greek scripts all came from the Phoenician. Arabic and most of the Indian scriptures came from the Aramaic. The entire Western world received its language from the Phoenicians, the descendants of the Anunnaki. Anyway, the N in Anak means one of the following, beginning the very first. The ultimate, the origin water on earth. This word became Aleph in Phoenician, Aramaic, Hebrew, Syriac, and Arabic. Aleph is the beginning of the alphabet in these languages. In Latin, it's A, and in Greek, it is Alpha. In Hebrew, the Aleph consists of two yuds, pronounced yod. One yud is situated to the upper right, and the other yud to the lower left. Both yuds are joined by a diagonal vav. They represent the higher water and the lower water, and between them, the heaven. This mystic, Kabbalistic interpretation was explained before by Rabbi Isaac Luria. Water is extremely important in all the sacred scriptures, as well as in the vast literature and scripts of extraterrestrials and Anunnaki. Water links humans to the Anunnaki. In the Babylonian account of the creation, Tablet 1 illustrates Apsu male, representing the primeval fresh water, and Tiamat female, the primeval salt water. These two were the parents of the gods. Apsu and Tiamat begat Lamu Lakmu and Lahamu Lakamu deities. In the Torah, the word water was mentioned in the first day of the creation of the world, and the Spirit of God hovered over the surface of the water. In the Chassidut, the higher water is wet and warm and represents the closeness to Yahweh God, and it brings happiness to man. The lower water is cold and brings unhappiness because it separates us from Yahweh, and man feels lonely and abandoned. The 10 Commandments commence with the letter Aleph. Anochi, I am God your God, who has taken you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. The letter Aleph holds the secret of man, its creation, and the whole universe, as is explained in the Midrash. In Hebrew, the numeric value of Aleph is 1, and the meaning is, first Adonai leader strength, Oxbow, 1,000 teach. According to Jewish teaching, each Hebrew letter is a spiritual force and power by itself, and comes directly from Yahweh. This force contains the raw material for the creation of the world and man. The Word of God ranges from the Aleph to the Tav, which is the last letter in Hebrew. In Revelation 1:8, Jesus said, I am Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the ending. In John 1:1-3, as the Word becomes Jesus, the Lord Jesus is also the Aleph and the Tav, as well as the Alpha and the Omega. In him exists all the forces and spiritual powers of the creation. Jesus is also connected to water, an essential substance for the purification of the body and the soul, which is why Christians developed baptism in water. In Islam, water is primordial and considered as the major force of the creation of the universe. The Prophet Muhammad said, as can be read in Quran, وَخَلَقْنَا لَكُم مِّنَ الْمَاءِ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ حَيٍّ, meaning, and we, Allah, have created for you from water everything alive. The Islamic numeric value of Aleph and God is 1. To the Anunnaki and many extraterrestrial civilizations, the N or Aleph represents number 1, also Nibiru, the constellation Orion, the star Aldebaran, and above all, the female aspect of the creation symbolized in an Anunnaki woman gigabyter, whom you know as the angel Gabriel on earth. The angel Gabriel was a woman? I asked, amazed. Unquestionably so, said Sinhar in Anushamra, smiling. She certainly still is. How interesting, I said, but do go on. What about the second part of the word and haya? The second part, namely the haya part, means life creation humans earth, where the first human, which was a female, was created. In Arabic, Hebrew, Aramaic, Turkish, Syriac, and so many Eastern languages, the Anunnaki words haya and hayat mean the same thing, life. But the most striking part of our story is that the original name of Eve, the first woman, is not Eve, but Hawa, derived directly from Haya. You see, Eve's name in the Bible is Hawa, or Kava. In the Quran, it is also Hawa, and in every single Semitic and Akkadian script, Eve is called Hawa or Hayat, meaning the giver of life, the source of the creation. Now, if we combine and with Haya or Hayat, we get these results. Beginning, the very first, the ultimate, the origin, water life, creation, humans, earth, where the first was created, woman. And the whole meaning becomes the origin of the creation, and first thing or person who created the life of humans was a woman, or water. Amazingly enough, in Anak, woman and water mean the same thing. Woman represents water according to the Babylonian, Sumerians, and Anunnaki tablets, as clearly written in the Babylonian Sumerian account of the creation, Tablet 1. Well, no wonder then that God has no gender in the Anunnaki concept, I said. I found it very interesting when Marduk told me about all that is as the name of God. Yes, it all ties together rather nicely, even if it is a little complicated, said Sinhar and Nashamra. A little? I said, laughing. I will have to think about this for a long time before I am comfortable with the concepts, but it is fascinating. I would like, moreover, to understand a little better how the Anunnaki created the human race. Well, it happened around 65,000 BCE, said Sinhar and Anushamra. The Anunnaki at that time lived in the areas you now call Iraq, which was Sumer, Mesopotamia, and Babylon, and Lebanon, which was Lubnan, Phoenicia, or Phoenicia. We taught your ancestors how to write, speak, play music, build temples, and navigate, as well as geometry, algebra, metallurgy, irrigation, and astronomy, among other arts. We had high hopes for this race, which we have created in our image. But the human race disappointed us almost from the beginning, for human beings were, and still are, cruel, violent, greedy, and ungrateful. So, we gave up on you and left Earth. The few remaining Anunnaki living in Iraq and Lebanon were killed by savage military legions from Greece, Turkey, and other nations of the region. The Anunnaki left Earth for good, or at least that was the plan at the time. Other extraterrestrial races came to Earth, but these celestial visitors were not friendly and considerate like the Anunnaki. The new extraterrestrials had a different plan for humanity, and their agenda included abduction of women and children, animal mutilation, genetic experiments on human beings, creating a new hybrid race, and so on. But you are still there, Sinhar and Anushamra, and you are still trying to help. Obviously, you would not have projects such as you had with me if you had forgotten us. No, we did not totally forget you. We could not. After all, many of your women were married to Anunnaki, and some of our women were married to humans. Ancient history, the Bible, Sumerian texts, Babylonian scriptures, Phoenician tablets, and historical accounts from around the globe recorded these events. You can find them, almost intact, in archaeological sites in Iraq and Lebanon, as well as in museums, particularly the British Museum, the Iraqi Museum, and the Lebanese Museum. So, how did you keep in touch with human civilization? Before leaving you, We activated in your cells the infinitesimally invisible multi-microscopic gene of Anhaya. Yes, this is how it is all connected. It was implanted in your organisms and it became a vital component of your DNA. Humans are not yet aware of this as they were not aware of the existence of their DNA for thousands of years. As your medicine, science, and technology advance, you will be able someday to discover that minuscule, invisible, undetectable, and Haya molecule exactly as you have discovered your DNA. And Haya cannot be detected yet in your laboratories. It is way beyond your reach and your comprehension, but it is extremely powerful because it is the very source of your existence. Through Anhaya, we remained in touch with you even though you are not aware of it. It is linked directly to a conduit and to a Miraya monitor or mirror on Nibiru. Every single human being on the face of the earth is linked to the outer world of the Anunnaki through an Aya, and it is faster than the speed of light. It reaches the Anunnaki through Ba'ab's stargates. It travels the universe and reaches the Miraya of the Anunnaki through the conduit, which was integrated in your genes and your cerebral cells by the Anunnaki some 65,000 years ago. The same conduit I have now? Yes, that same conduit. Of course, humans cannot use it since it was not activated like yours. But hopefully, someday, they will be able to. And how do the Anunnaki receive the content of a conduit to allow them to watch over the humans? I asked. Through the Miraya, which we created to function with the conduit and the Anhaya, even though we felt that you do not deserve it. The Anunnaki have been watching you, monitoring your activities, listening to your voices, witnessing your wars, brutality, greed, and indifference toward each other's for centuries. We did not interfere, at least not very much. But from my experience, you are returning? Yes, we will, because we fear two things that could destroy Earth and annihilate the human race. The domination of Earth and the human race by the Greys, and the destruction of human life and planet Earth by the hands of humans. The whole Earth could blow up. Should this happen, the entire solar system could be destroyed. For we know, should anything happen to the moon, the Earth will cease to exist. Is there hope that we will change? There is always hope. We are trying to change you. The most delightful and comforting aspect of it is the hope for peace, a brighter future, and a better life you can accomplish and reach when you discover how to use it without abusing it. Every one of you can do that. I wonder how many humans I know will see such change in their lifetime, I said wistfully. Even when people die, their Anhaya will always be there for them to use before they depart Earth. It will never go away because it is part of you. Without it, you couldn't exist. Just before you die, your brain activates it for you. Seconds before you die, your mind will project the reenactment of all the events and acts, good and bad, in your entire life, past, and zoom you right toward your next non-physical destination. Where and when you judge yourself, your deeds, and your existence, and where you decide whether you wish to elevate yourself to a higher dimension or stay in the state of nothingness and loneliness, and for how long. Everything is up to the individual. So there is no death. Our minds live forever. Indeed, there is no death. Your minds live on and make all the individual decisions about their future. What about reincarnation? Do we return to Earth ever? No, you will not return to Earth, nor will your soul migrate to another soul or another body. From evidence we know, not just believe, that there is no such thing. And why would you wish to return to Earth anyway? Earth is the lowest sphere of existence for humans. Everything else is an improvement. It's good to know that you have not deserted us, Sinhar Inanashamra. It makes me feel safer for myself and for humanity. My dear Victoria, you are now a full Anunnaki. You will never ever be alone. but I understand your attachment to your previous fellow humans. There is no reason to worry about them. The humans are always connected to the Anunnaki in this life and the next, and in the future we plan a much closer communication. So please go on to your mission with a lighter heart. There is plenty of bright hope for everyone, even the hybrids, I dare say. I went home feeling much better about life, the universe, and my mission. As a matter of fact, I began to look forward to it as a new adventure. And soon I will have a baby girl too. Chapter 12. Reporting to the Council. My return to Nibiru at the end of my mission, the Akashic Library, and my report to the Council. I am now waiting for my daughter's arrival, and planning an astounding time travel trip to meet one of the most important persons in human history. Marduk, I said into the monitor during our daily conversation, I am finished here. I have done all I could, and I would like to return to Nibiru and make my report to the council. Will you be ready later this evening? Asked Marduk. I was now used to Nibiru-like speed, so I got my stuff ready in advance. I am ready now, I said. Very well, I'll be there shortly, so you can say your goodbyes to anyone you want. The monitor flickered off, and I sat waiting for Marduk, looking at the notes I prepared for my report to the council. There was, quite literally, no one to say goodbye to. A sad statement after spending 8 months on the Gray's base, but precisely this situation was, anyway, an important part of my report. I was more than ready to return to Nibiru. I cannot tell you how happy I was to be home again. In a couple of days I was supposed to meet the council at the Akashic Library, and I spent these days in complete idleness, except for my happy reunion with everyone in my family and my daily visits to the incubator, where my darling baby was almost ready to emerge, with only 4 weeks to go. Her big black eyes were wide open, staring at the big world outside with interest and curiosity, and she had soft black fuzz on her precious little head. I was wondering if she knew who I was, and of course seeing Marduk again was a joy. Naturally, I missed him very much, and living alone with the Greys and hybrids was not what could be considered a comfort. I was a little apprehensive about meeting the council, since I felt that my mission was not a glowing success, but I knew I could not ask Marduk to come with me when I went to give the report. Anunnaki women do not ask their husbands to protect them. They are completely equal to any man in their ability to take care of themselves physically as well as emotionally. I was not going to lower my credibility before the council by acting like a human woman who, we must admit, sometimes shows such occasional weakness. But Marduk, always sensitive to my moods, must have noticed something or read a passing thought, because when we were having dinner on the evening before my dreaded meeting with the council, he said, "Did Sinhar Inanashamra tell you that she decided to come to your meeting?" "No, I had no idea," I said, relief practically flooding my entire being. "How come? Of course I know she is a member of the council, but this is not the area she works with these days." "Or she is interested, I suppose," said Marduk in a very neutral way. "Any member of the council can choose to come." I would have bet my right arm that Marduk asked her to be there for me, but since he would not admit it or even mention it, preferring to let me believe that he thought of me as a full Anunnaki, I decided not to inquire any further. We took our coffee and went to sit peacefully in the garden, and soon Miriam came to wish me luck with my presentation, and somehow the whole thing did not seem so menacing after all. Until this time I did not have the opportunity to tell you much about the Akashic Library, which is really a very important part of the Anunnaki culture. Marduk spent a large amount of his time there, doing research for his various missions, and I suspect simply enjoying himself as well by immersion in all sorts of information. And since I'm about to tell you about the meeting, this is a good opportunity to describe the library. The reason it is called the Akashic Library is that it has equipment that allows the researcher to connect to the Akashic record, the vast compendium of knowledge encoded in a non-physical plane of existence, in a substance that is called Akasha. The Akashic record has been described as a library, a universal computer, the mind of God, the universal mind, the collective unconscious, and a dozen other metaphors. But in the end, it is a collection of records of everything that has ever been thought of or experienced, every word, every action. The individual records in it are constantly updated. On Nibiru, each Anunnaki has access to the Akashic record through the Akashic libraries, which are located in every community. The libraries everywhere have the same appearance, and they are built very differently from the normally classical architecture of the Anunnaki. Usually, the houses are built of various types of stone, marble, or bricks, but the libraries are constructed from materials such as glass, fiberglass, or other plastic-like materials. They give the impression of a modern, industrialized edifice. One enters through a huge door that is never closed, day and night. It opens into a huge hall, 700 to 1,000 meters in length by 500 meters in width. The hall is empty of any furniture and is lit by windows that are placed very high near the ceiling. The windows were designed in such a way that the shafts of light that enter through them are very sharply delineated and look like solid beams of light. At night, the same effect is achieved by enormous spotlights placed near the windows. The result is incredibly impressive. Extremely large billboards hang on each wall, and on the floor in front of each billboard there are hundreds of pads. When visitors enter the library, they approach the billboard, stand each on a pad, and think about their destination within the building. The pad has the capacity to read minds, and as soon as it does so, it begins to move and slides right through the billboard, which is not really solid but is made of a form of energy, carrying the visitor with it. Behind the billboard is the main hall of the Akashic Library. But the Anunnaki Akashic Library is not a library in the traditional sense, because it contains no physical books on shelves, and not even cones, that are the normal format for an Anunnaki book. Instead, the visitors find themselves in the presence of an immense screen made of materials that are not found on Earth. The screen is hard to describe. It can be compared to a grid, with a multitude of matrices and vortices of data. The screen is contacted through the conduit. It can read minds, and it knows right away what information the visitors seek. All the visitors have to do is stand still in front of the screen, and the data will be displayed. Of course, the data is not represented by lines, sentences, or paragraphs, but rather by codes. Each code contains particular information related to an aspect of the subject. For example, if you would like to visit Iraq, 2000s BCE, 300 CE, and 2008 CE, all you have to do is to focus on these requirements, and 3 codes will appear on the screen, waiting for your command. Open them up. From this moment on, the conduit and the screen are communicating in the most direct fashion. The 3 files will open up. The nearest description of these files would be digital. For the lack of the proper word, each one will contain everything that had happened pertaining to that particular date in Iraq. The conduit will sort out, classify, and index the particular data for the part of the information the visitor is most interested in. Then the information will be stored automatically in the cells of the visitor's brain, increasing the size of the depot of knowledge in the brain. And because Anunnaki are connected to each other and to their community via the conduit, the data recently absorbed is sent to other Anunnaki to share it, which is extremely beneficial. Because if the data received from the screen is difficult to understand, the Anunnaki community or an individual Anunnaki will send also automatically the explanation needed. This is quite similar to an online technical support on Earth, but it is much more efficient since it functions brain to brain. As mentioned before, each Anunnaki community has the same kind of center for these mirrors of knowledge, which are the Akashic files. The complexity of the centers, though, is not the same. Some of the Akashic libraries include more perplexing and complicated instruments and tools, which are not readily available to other communities. These tools include the monitor, which is also called mirror or Miraya in Anak. Each Miraya is under the direct control of a Sinhar, who serves as custodian and guardian. It is very important to protect the privacy of every member of the community, because individual Anunnaki could attempt to tap into the data of the Miraya and have access to the codes of the telepathic communication of other Anunnaki, thus enabling them to read the mind of all the community members, something that is considered highly unethical and absolutely must be avoided. The screens, by the way, can expand according to the number of codes that the Anunnaki researcher is using. 7 to 10 codes are normal. If a larger number of codes are opened, the screen is fragmented into 7 different screens, which are only visible to an Anunnaki mind. An amazing phenomenon occurs at this moment. Time and space mingle together and become unified into one great continuum. This enables the researcher to grasp all the information in a fraction of a second. An added convenient aspect of the Akashic files is the ability of the researchers to access them in the complete privacy of the researchers' homes or offices. Since the files can be teleported there. But since the private screen is not as complicated as the central one in the library, no multiple screen will open up, only the original one. It is important to understand that the data received is not merely visual, there is much more to it than that. By the right side of the screen, there are metallic compartments as thin as parchment paper, which serve as a cosmic audio antennae. These compartments search for and bring back any sound that had occurred in history, in any era, in any country, and of any magnitude of importance. This includes voices of people, preachers, prophets, etc. And this is just the tiny part of it which is human, because it also brings sounds made by many other civilizations. According to the Anunnaki, every single sound or voice is never lost in the universe. Of course, it may not traverse certain boundaries. For humans, if the sound was produced on Earth, such a boundary is the solar system. Each of these antenna compartments will probe different galaxies and star systems, listening, recording, retrieving, and playing back sounds, voices, and noises. A combined asset of the visual and audio systems is the ability to learn languages that is afforded by the Akashic Library. This applies to any language, past, present, or future, and from any part of the universe. The researcher can call up a shining globe of light that will swirl on the screen with enormous speed. As it rotates, the effect blends with an audio transmission that comes from the metallic compartments. In an instant, any language will sink into the brain cells. On the left side of the screen, there are conic compartments that bring still images of certain important past events. This display informs the researcher that these particular events cannot be altered. In other words, the Anunnaki cannot go back into the past and change it. The Anunnaki are forbidden to change or alter the events, or even just parts or segments of the events represented on the conic compartment, because these images represent events created by the Anunnaki themselves. This restriction works as an essential security device. For example, a young Anunnaki cannot visit Earth 65,000 years ago, enter the genetic lab of the Anunnaki in Sumer or Phoenicia, and change the DNA and the genetic formula originally used by Sinhar Enki or Sinhar Anu to create the human race, or the 7 prototypes of the human race created by Sinhar Inanna. Sinhar Inanna herself can go back and change it, but not for use on Earth as we know it. She has to transpose it and transport it to another dimension, parallel to the original dimension where the event occurred. This safeguard means that Sinhar Inanna cannot recreate a new race on our Earth by the device of sending the current living humans back in time, remolding us, and then bringing us back to the 21st century as a new species. This would be unethical. All she can do is recreate her own experiment in another dimension. More options are available for research, and one of them is a sort of browsing. Inside the screen, there is a slit where the mind of the Anunnaki can enter as a beam. This will open the Ba'abs or stargates to other worlds that the researcher is not even aware of. They appear randomly as part of the discovery or exploration. In each slit, there is an Akashic file that belongs to another civilization, sometimes more advanced than the Anunnaki themselves, where the researcher can retrieve important information. It is like going back into the future, because everything present or occurring in the future has already occurred in a distant past and needed time to surface and appear before the current living Anunnaki. And there is also the option of simply having fun, some of which is not so ethical. Sometimes an Anunnaki will go back in time, let's say 400 Celsiuses. Choose a famous historical figure, and at the same time bring over another important person, 1,000 years older, simply to see how they would interact. They can easily deceive these personages since every Anunnaki is an adept at shape-shifting, or they can transpose people, move them in time, and see how they will react to the new environment. These games are strictly forbidden, but some low-class Anunnaki occasionally try it as a game. Sometimes they interfere with our daily affairs, and temporary loss of memory may be a result of that. Anunnaki children, though usually extremely well behaved, may also play silly games, such as deliberately misplacing objects and then returning them to the amazement of the human. These games, while they can be quite annoying, never harm anyone seriously. One unpleasant result may surface in therapy, though. A psychiatrist might tell a person complaining of such an event that his or her mind is playing tricks. Well, it is indeed a trick, but not created by the mind. It is performed by the Anunnaki people. Well, nobody is perfect, not even the Anunnaki. Early in the morning, as directed, I entered the Akashic library. I was informed ahead of time precisely to which room I had to go for my meeting and what was the etiquette, so I was ready. I wore a formal white long gown, following Miriam's instructions of what was the right outfit for the occasion. The door was always open at the Akashic library, so I just walked in, stood on a pad before one of the great billboards, sent a message saying council, and went through the billboard to the other side. The pad glided to a side door, which opened into a large room. The pad would stay there until my business was finished, and then retrace its steps back into the front room, unless given different instructions. The room was entirely empty, with no windows, but had a glass ceiling, creating the atmosphere of an atrium. The walls were off-white, made of the same material as the outside, smooth and clean. It was a little intimidating, but as soon as I stepped in, a comfortable armchair came out of the floor and turned itself toward me, as if asking me to sit. Right away, a few other armchairs sprouted from the floor, and in an instant 5 members of the council, including Sinhar Inanna Shamra, materialized in them. I stood up and bowed to them, following the etiquette, and the whole group got up and bowed back to me. That apparently concluded the formal part, and they all smiled at me in a most encouraging manner and very kindly asked me if I was ready to tell them about my mission with the Greys. Of course, our entire conversation was conducted telepathically, but I will report it as if we were talking verbally. Come to think of it, there's very little difference, except that the telepathic conversations take very little time by comparison to verbal conversations. My fear disappeared completely. I pulled out my papers and told them the whole truth about my mission, which I have found rather distressing. There was little I could do for the hybrids, no matter how hard I tried. Emotionally, the children were severely damaged goods. None of them could be referred to as a normal child. In my opinion, they were all showing symptoms of serious personality syndromes, autism, and various mental illnesses. Those children who had the advantage of meeting the abductees on a regular basis, that is, those abductees who came specifically to play with them, were somewhat better, but not much. Their mentality, as I have suspected from the start, was entirely communal, much like ants or bees, and they tended to do just about everything together. If separated from their group, they showed signs of severe distress. However, something happened at the onset of adolescence. Up to that point, all the activities were geared towards socializing the children and getting them acquainted with Earth and with humans' day-to-day activities, mainly through games. But at adolescence, they were given new tasks geared toward reproduction. Unlike the Greys, the adolescent hybrids were interested in sexual activity, and as soon as they showed signs of their interest, they were encouraged to mate. The hybrids can imitate human emotions since they have a limited amount of telepathic ability that allows them to acquire quite a bit of information from the abductees. The results can be devastating, since a male hybrid could actually persuade a female abductee that he is in love with her, mimicking human emotions and style of communication. As a result, she may form very strong feelings for the hybrid, but in reality, he does not feel love at all, being incapable of true feelings toward humans. The same can happen with a female hybrid and a male abductee. The only strong feeling an adolescent hybrid has is a sense of loss, sadness, and depression about his or her own life, and nothing can alleviate this type of suffering. All this can lead to many cases of abuse, both physical and emotional, mostly because the hybrids do not know how to deal with their feelings and often lash out against their partners. One bad case of physical abuse caused me to tell the abductee that she could come with me out of the base, that I could take her to freedom and make sure the Greys never bother her again. But by that time, her mind was so warped that she refused to leave, telling me how much she loved the hybrid who mistreated her and how she hoped that he will be changed someday by her love. Another aspect of my mission was truly devastating. I knew that the abductions took place for thousands of years. There is even biblical evidence to such doings. But during my stay, I have learned that the rate of abductions was greatly accelerated at certain times, including the present. Having investigated these periods, I saw the correlation between a larger number of hybrids introduced into human society, while propagating their genes of cruelty, indifference, and lack of ethics or morality, which are much worse than those of normal human beings and human events. Each time the abductions accelerated, they created the worst times humanity ever experienced. The accelerated abductions corresponded to the Inquisition, for example, to the Holocaust in Nazi Germany, and even were related to specific people, such as Vlad Dracula, Stalin, Genghis Khan, and many, many others. Torquemada, Hitler, and the others mentioned above were loaded with the Greys' DNA. We are now experiencing an accelerated period. It has started in the 1920s. We can see the results already, but the next few decades will be even worse. I also told the council that I had very little success with the human Anunnaki offspring. There were only 7 of them on Earth, and none needed my help at all. Most of them were extremely successful in their chosen fields. Ironically, one of them was a famous writer of science fiction, who thought that his ideas came to him out of his own imagination, while in truth he retained an enormous amount of Anunnaki knowledge, which worked very nicely as fiction. So this part of my mission was not a success either. One thing I did do, I naturally watched over my son and his family via the monitor, and I had the supreme luck of saving them from a car accident. They were driving on a narrow road, a car came toward them very fast, and in an instant I lifted the car off the ground, made it hover in the air until the other car passed, and then let them gently down again. Of course I made them forget the whole incident, something that by now I knew how to do, but that was a personal triumph, and the mission was a failure. Not at all, my dear Sinhar Ambar Anati, said one of the council. We consider your mission a huge success. Why? I said, perplexed. First of all, you may have saved the life of your son. We have tremendous hopes for his future. We think he will be instrumental to our plan for humanity. Had he been killed by a car accident, all our plans for him would have failed to materialize. But what about the hybrids? That too is a great success. You must realize that the Anunnaki have serious distaste to being with the Greys. You are the first, the absolute first, to live with them, learn their way with the hybrids, and basically see how they function. We will read your notes very carefully, Sinhar Ambaranati, and we will meet again and again to learn more from you. Your analysis of the periods of acceleration is a particularly important find, something we did not know but we must study very carefully. It is extremely significant. I am very happy if this is so, Your Honor, I said. It is so. And what is more, it opens many roads for you for the future. We understand how you feel about the Greys' activities, and even though in the past we did little about it, your view brings fresh insights. We may change our entire treatment of the Greys and of humanity because of your findings, and we think that as we develop a new policy, you will very likely be asked if you would consent to act as an envoy to some of the human governments which are collaborating with the Greys and make a stop to the atrocities. I was so stunned by this statement that I stared at them, speechless. Sinhar Inanashamra laughed. My great-great-granddaughter is overwhelmed, my friends. We will allow her some time to absorb all that, and I hope all of us meet regularly over the next few years to develop a solid plan for her new mission. We are grateful to you, Sinhar Ambar Anati, said another member of the council. I know you are about to have a daughter. I suggest you rest for a while, enjoy your family, but still spend some time with us. We will introduce you to various subjects through the Akashic Library, where you will have the opportunity to study at your leisure and prepare for your new mission as an envoy to Earth. Would that please you? I found my voice. That would make me exceedingly happy, Your Honor, I said. It was all I could do not to cry with the happiness for these results. If indeed the Anunnaki would rise to end the atrocities and save the lives of humans, not to mention prevent more of the Greys' DNA from contaminating the Earth, it will be worth every effort, every sacrifice. All the council members smiled at me, bowed again, and vanished, except Sinhar Inanashamra. She stayed with me, signaled a pad to come and carry her, and we glided back to the large hall and then strolled home together. My goodness, Sinhar Inanashamra, I said. Here I thought my mission was a failure, and yet they were so pleased. I will never understand. Well, said Sinhar Inanashamra, you might as well enjoy the glory and start visiting the Akashic Library. Did they really mean it? Me, an envoy? Why not? You are the perfect advocate for humanity with your dual nature and affiliations. You got them thinking in a new way, quite an achievement. I must start my studies right away, I said. Yes, you should get acquainted with the library, learn how to navigate it, and how to utilize the tools. Is there something you would like to learn? Something that interests you? I think anything would do. It's just for practice, and I will help you. Yes, I said, musing. There is one thing I would like to do, and it involves a bit of time travel. There is a person I always wanted to meet, a person from the deep past. I wonder if it can be arranged? Who is the person? Asked Sinhar Inanashamra. Mary Magdalene, I said. Really? Said Sinhar Inanashamra. Jesus' wife? Yes, she was an interesting woman. Yes, of course you can meet her. We will need to do a little shape-shifting and go and visit her. I imagine you would want to see both of them in France, right? Perhaps meet their children? I have heard the theory of her being Jesus' wife, but I don't know much about it, and there is so much conflicting evidence. But France? Didn't she live out her life in Judea? And I always assumed Jesus died in Judea too, on the cross. Was I wrong on that? They'll have plenty to tell you, I can see that, said Sinhar in Anashamra, laughing.